Hello, Tungsten Miner here. I am standing right now at the spawn point for this server. And as you notice, it's not just the middle of the woods somewhere. There's actually kind of some interesting stuff going on. Since this is a server, and since it's a survival server, I kind of didn't want people to just walk into the server in the middle of the night and get killed by a zombie somewhere. So, as you can see, I've got this place really well lit up. I've got some beds to sleep in, and I've got a nice high fence all the way around. But of course, since one of the things I really like to focus on is making things look realistic and look really pretty, I've done a lot of decorating here, so I want to walk through how exactly that decorating was done and what kinds of mods I used to make it. And so let's start with these candles. So I mentioned very briefly in the intro video that I'm using a mod called Garden Stuff, and it gives you these candelabra and these wrought iron fences, which is the same wrought iron fence here, except when they stand by themselves, they look like posts. So I was able to use the same fence material to make it look like these are big candelabra on stalks, but that's one piece, and there's another piece, and there's another piece. And if we come in here, we just take a look at candelabra, we can see this is the one that I wound up using. So get some candles, some wrought iron nuggets, and wrought iron, and that gives you 4 of these things. And the wrought iron itself, we use this bloomery bloomery process in order to combine charcoal, sand, and iron ingot into producing the wrought iron. So that gets you these things. These pillars here come from the chisel mod. So you take your chisel, which I happen not to have on me, and open it up and put some material in there so it'll accept a whole bunch of things, wood and cobblestone and smooth stone and marble and all kinds of stuff. And then give you a whole bunch of patterns to choose from. So I'll take a look at that again when I go find my chisel. And then up on top here, you can see I've got, I've got a sphere. Now this comes from the architecture mod. And that allows you to make blocks of all sorts of different shapes, including a lot of round shapes, which are otherwise just impossible. Here I've got a stone coffin. This comes from DecoCraft. And I went and made a whole bunch of these things. So this is kind of like the respawn area and the graves of the fallen heroes. And then down here, I've got some candles and an iron door, which comes from the Malace's Doors mod. And then this is just a simple vanilla pressure plate so that this door can get a redstone signal and open up. So I'm going to go sleep. These DecoCraft beds actually allow you to sleep. Now, they don't reset your position, so they work kind of like the sleeping bag, but they do allow you to pass the night at least. And then just to get out, step on the pressure plate and walk through, and here we are. Now, this road is just ordinary dirt blocks, but passed through the chisel, and so I was able to give them a different texture. These little notches are actually just regular old buttons that are made out of a certain kind of stone. There's a bug, unfortunately, with the Underground Biomes Constructs buttons where they change pattern when you look at them. Also marble passed through the chisel mod. Also marble passed through the chisel mod. So this is almost entirely marble. The wrought iron fence, we can look that up, is just one of these guys. And they come in a variety of different patterns, so you can keep kind of working your way through. So I think this is the pattern that I wound up using. And once you've made a bit of wrought iron fence, you can just put it back on the crafting table to alternate through the different shapes that you can possibly get. Okay, so that's it for the spawn area. And then this road I made that basically goes between all of the interesting places that we have in this world. So I'm just going to zoom along here. And now we're at this junction. So off in this direction goes to one of my friends who's got his own little house and base down in that direction. And as we continue along in this direction, we can get to seeing one of my other friends who's partway through making her big house. And up on the hill here, we can see that there's actually a village. Kind of unusual to have a village so close to the spawn, but we got lucky this time around. Now, one of the other things I'll point out is you can see we're in kind of this interesting little bowl or depression. And that comes from the alternate terrain generation mod. So it makes much more realistic terrain, including these nice big open spaces, these nice gradual hills, these little plateau areas. Really, really nice mod. A little finicky if you start messing with the default controls, but really very nice mod all the same. So here is our village, and I've built this wall just taking cobblestone and passing it through the chisel mod. And I've lit it up with torches to make sure we don't get any mobs spawning in here. And to help make it easy on players joining the server, we've got a bunch of different agricraft crops, potatoes and grapes and sugarcane and I'm not sure what that is, tomatoes, lettuce, lots of different things so that you can get started with your own world. And we've got a bunch of villagers, of course. So, passing through the village, we can get to the road that meets up on the other side. So I found myself a horse, and it was kind of inconvenient to go through the village each time, so I had the road go around the side of the village as well. And following this road, we get back inside of my house. So I want to talk a little bit about how I choose where it is that I'm going to park myself and set up my base. I've got a rocket pack, so I'll fly around. You can see I've actually got a pretty big amount of space that I've used. I've been exploring forestry and getting lots of trees. I've got all of these buildings back behind here. I've got my main house, which is really quite large, greenhouse, my industrial room. This is my little orchard for all of the fruit trees and things that Harvestcraft adds. So you can see I kind of knew that I was going to want a lot of space. Just the main walled-in area alone is 64 meters by 64 meters. So I knew I wanted a big flat area. So as I was scouting around, I'd find hills and valleys, and what I found here was a nice flat area. It was all birch forest when I first came in, or flower forest. And I decided then this was the place. So I started by clearing out the 64-meter square area and just making it totally flat using some of the tools that we'll talk about from Tinker's Construct in just a minute. Once I had it all flattened out, the first thing I actually did was to build the wall around the outside edge so that I kind of knew I was in a contained, safe area, and put down lots of torches so that I knew nothing could get in. And that's when I started building the foundations of the house and laying out some of the gardens and things. So let's talk about some of those Tinker's Construct tools. Down here in my unpowered workroom, I've got all of these different Tinker's Construct benches of one kind or another. So when you start the game, you get this set of books from Tinker's Construct. The first one is this Materials in You business. And it shows you a bunch about how to get started and make some of the basic tools. So blank patterns are important, stencil tables are important. And it shows you all the recipes and what to do. And as you tick back through this book, you see how to make a smeltery, the various extensions and other books that you can get, how to make some special armor, which is actually still the armor that I'm using. Click, 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 and that's all the stuff. So in the second book, this Materials in You book, whoops, that's not the right one. There we go. It shows you the different materials and tools that you can make. So Tinker's Construct is all about the different tools being made out of different parts, which each can have their own properties and lend different strengths and capabilities to the tools that you make. So for example, making a pickaxe, you need to have a pickaxe head, a tool rod, and a tool binding. But it doesn't say what you have to make them out of. So you could make this one out of steel, and this one out of wood, and this one out of, I don't know, paper or cactus or something completely crazy. And then making all three of them together, you'll use one of these tables and then assemble the pieces into the final tool. And even after you've made the tool, you can mix in other materials to make them even more effective. So here are the different kinds of tools, just rapidly going through. And then finally we get to this part of the book that tells you about the different materials. So everything has a whole block and then a shard and then a rod. So stick and stick are easy because that's what you get for wood. But if we look at like stone, the material's obviously stone, stone shard is the piece, and then stone tool rod is the rod. And looking at these two, stone versus iron, durability 131, durability 250. So if you make something out of iron, it's going to last a lot longer. The handle modifier. So the durability is going to be multiplied by the handle modifier. So if you use stone as your handle, it's going to knock your durability in half. Whereas if you use iron, it's going to multiply it by 1.3. Full tool durability is if you used only this material to make the whole tool. Mining speed is how quickly will it break a block. So 4 versus 6, iron's a lot faster. Mining level is what sort of material is the hardest thing that this will be able to cut through. So with a pickaxe, for example, so stone can only cut through iron blocks. It won't be able to get through redstone or anything harder than that. Iron will be able to get through redstone, but not obsidian. Base attack, if you use this for making a sword, here's how much damage it's going to do to alter how much damage it does from the base for that weapon. So half a heart, a full heart. And then material trait. And there's a lot of different material traits that are kind of listed in the back of this book. Stonebound means as this tool gets used up, it gets closer to having 0 durability, it will work faster. So this mining speed goes up as it gets closer to being used. Reinforced means that every time you do something that could cause it to lose durability, maybe it won't. There's a small % chance that it won't lose durability. And there's lots of different materials that you can use, and they have lots of different properties. One of the things, though, is anything that's metal is going to require the smeltery to make that metal. And I'll talk about the smeltery in a little bit. Another interesting material is slime crystals. So as we flip through, here we are, the recipe for making slime crystals. Take some regular green slime, mix it with dirt and sand. That gets you some mud. Put that through a furnace, and you get these crystals. The crystals then can be used to make tools. Now, the funny thing about these crystals is that generally they're pretty lousy for use as the head of an object, so as a pickaxe head or a sword blade. But when they're used as a handle, they double or 1.5 times. These are the best things to use for handles. So not all materials are better or worse at the same thing. Sometimes you want to use certain materials only for certain parts of a tool. Paper's interesting because it adds more modifiers. Talk about what that can do for you in a moment. Lots of other materials. Okay, so here's where you can modify a tool. If you take a regular tool, any old pickaxe, doesn't matter what the parts are made out of, and you craft it together on the tool forge with a diamond, it will add 500 extra durability and increase the mining level so you can dig up obsidian. It could be a wooden pickaxe. Going to get 500 extra durability, and it's going to be able to mine obsidian. Now, of course, diamonds are rare, kind of expensive, so you don't want to put them on a lousy wooden pickaxe. But you could if you wanted to, and it would get all those abilities. You can add an emerald, and it will increase the mining level by a little bit and make it half again as durable as it is. You can add redstone to things, and they will just mine faster. So each little bit of redstone you add will make it go faster and faster. Adding moss will make something auto-repair. Adding a lava crystal will make something so that it catches mobs on fire if you hit them with it, and it will automatically smelt any ore that you get. And here's how you make those two different things. Adding lapis will give you luck or fortune, depending upon whether it's a weapon or a tool. Adding quartz will make a weapon more effective. I'm not going to go through all of these. There's a whole bunch of them. And all it takes is to add them on to whatever it is that you're looking at. So let's take a look at how this works. The first thing you want to make is this stencil table. And that's going to expect to have a stencil, and it will turn it into whatever one of these you want. So let me quickly make a stencil. You just need a couple of sticks, and you need some wood, and you get 4 stencils. So if we drop these onto our stencil table, I can now pick any one of these different kinds of stencils for anything I like. And if I grab this off, it will give me that stencil. So if I want an axe head pattern, boom, now I've got an axe head pattern. So I've previously gone through and made all the different patterns, and here they are in my little pattern chest. And now I can use my part builder, which if you place it next to the pattern chest, it'll augment the UI. If you have it standing by itself, then you have to just have them in your inventory manually. So if I wanted to make a pickaxe, if I want to make an axe head out of, say, cobblestone, I can drop some cobblestone in there, and now I've got a stone axe head. I've also got a stick, which we remember is the wooden rod. So now I can come over to my tool forge and drop the, go pick my tool. I want to make a hatchet, drop my stone axe head in there, drop my stick in there, and now I've made myself a stone-bound hatchet. And if I wanted to improve this hatchet, I could, say, add a little bit of, there we go, grab some nether quartz. Now remember, nether quartz increases the damage that something does. So if I take my stone hatchet and toss it in there, and then I toss in some nether quartz in these different sections, we can see modifiers remaining goes from 3 down to 2, and it says modifier quartz 1 of 72. So I can add 72 chunks of quartz for 1 modifier slot. Now, if I had some moss, I could toss that on there and it would auto-repair itself. If I had some redstone, I could toss it on there and it would make the hatchet faster. And most of these materials can be added to most tools. So, taking a look at some of the stuff I've made already, one of the first things I make myself is a cleaver. It's the most powerful sword in the game. So looking at what I've got here, yeah. So my durability here is 5,000 something. So just remember, here's my stone hatchet, durability 131. Here's my cleaver, gives me a whole lot more. Now the cleaver is made out of maniolan, which is one of the alloys that you can create, which is kind of hard to find the materials for, as the 2 component metals are only found in the nether. It has a green slime handle, it has an obsidian plate, it has a whole lot of nether quartz attached to it, and it has a little bit of moss attached to it. So now it does a total of 25 attack damage, which is enough to kill just about anything in the game except Enderman. Another example, here's my Ardite pickaxe, and it's got a green slime handle, it's got an alumite pickaxe head, which is another one of our alloys. And it's got a stone cross piece, I think, and an obsidian. Oh no, the reinforced 2 comes from the alumite itself. So anyway, lots of different options. Another thing that is added by Tinker's Construct are these great pieces of armor. So Tinker's goggles, Traveler's wings, Traveler's boots, and then there's a Traveler's vest, which I'm not using because I'm wearing my jetpack at the moment. But all of these things also can be augmented. So when I made the Traveler's goggles initially, they gave me a little protection. That's about it. I added some moss. Now I get auto repair. I added some night vision potion and a golden carrot and a couple of other things, and that gives me night vision. So now when it's dark outside, I can go look, say, oh yeah, I can't see anything. But if I hit my activator key, I get night vision turned on automatically, and for as long as I want. So I don't have to brew potions for night vision. I just have to use my goggles with that extension, which is extraordinarily handy. Traveler's wings, you can get feather fall. Traveler's boots, you can get high step to step over 1 meter blocks. Not so relevant in the newest versions of Minecraft, but certainly very handy in 1.7.10, which is what the server's on. And then the armor piece gives you fast movement in water. So yeah, that's kind of the whole thing. Now this tool station is basically the same thing as my tool forge, except it's made only out of wood and therefore very cheap to make. And unfortunately, you can't make quite as many tools with it, so I've got a lot more options over here. So generally what you do is you start out by making this guy, and then once you've got the materials, you make this guy. So the tool station is this. So just a crafting station with or even just a crafting table with a blank pattern on top of it. Very, very cheap. But what you can use this to make is your tool forge, which requires 4 blocks of some kind of metal, any kind of metal. So gold, iron, copper, whatever your server happens to have. And then some of these seared bricks, which come from Tinker's Construct as well. Yeah, so making these seared bricks is just take some grout, run it through a furnace, and in order to make them, you just need sand, gravel, and clay mixed together. Okay, so that's the kind of low-tech side of things. Let's go look at what this smeltery does. So I'm going to go and grab a bunch of copper and a bunch of tin, and we'll wander downstairs to go look at the smeltery. Okay, here we are in the smeltery room. This is a much larger version of what you might build originally. The smeltery is made out of these seared bricks, which we looked at the recipe for before. And then you can use the seared bricks in various patterns in order to make the different pieces. There we go. Okay, so if you take a ring of them, you get your controller. That's sort of the brain of the smeltery, as it says. You need one of these in every smeltery, or it just won't become a smeltery. So smeltery is a big multi-block structure where you build a ring. You build a 3x3 pattern of just plain old smeltery bricks underneath. And then you make a ring around the top of it in order to get the actual smeltery itself. So you need to have a controller. You need to have some kind of drain in order to get the metals out again. A casting table allows you to make the different parts, just like the parts table does, except you can pour the molten metal into patterns on the casting table, and that will allow you to make the different parts. And casting basin allows you to pour off as much metal as will fit into 9 ingots, so it'll make one block of metal at a time. A seared tank is what you need to pour your fuel into, lava in this case. Seared glass just allows you to see through into the sides, but otherwise it works just like the wall of the tank. Seared window, same thing, just a different way of doing it. A seared faucet. This is the second piece you need. You attach this to the what is it called? The seared, this guy, drain, smeltery drain. You just click it onto the smeltery drain, and that allows you to pour out the metal. And then the seared bricks is what you make the rest of the sides of the thing out of. I haven't quite figured out how this casting channel works, so I'll just skip right over that. So anyway, once you've got this thing put together, I've got 3 drains, I've got 3 faucets, I've got 2 basins and a casting table, and then the whole rest of this structure is really just seared bricks all around. And if we take a peek inside here, we can see the floor is 3x3 on the inside, and then the walls just go straight up to the ceiling. So let me, whoops, one of the bricks fell into the controller itself. So let me put them back, and that will reassemble my smeltery here. I've got a couple of tanks. These are from thermal expansion. They allow me to carry a lot of liquid. So I've got them full of lava, which is the fuel you need to power this thing. So we look inside. I've got almost 3 buckets worth of fuel. So if I grab my bucket over here, scoop out some lava, and then just dump it in there, we'll fill up that tank. And now, if I wanted to make an alloy, I need to take some metal and put it in there. So if I want to make bronze, for example, I need 3 pieces of copper and 1 piece of tin. So now that I've got them in there, you can see these little red bars are starting to grow very slowly on the sides. When they finally get all the way to the top, the metals will melt into this inner container. And if you put in the right mixture of the right metals, you can get an alloy. And in this case, I'm going to be getting a bronze alloy. So let's wait for this to finish up. Okay, so the tin is just about there. It's going to melt first. And we'll see the little puddle of tin down here in the bottom. And here's the copper, almost done. So the different metals have to be heated to different temperatures to melt. And the sturdier and stronger the metal, the longer, of course, that will take. And the longer something's being smelted, the more fuel it's using up. Okay, so we saw briefly the copper on top, and then the smeltery mixed them together, and now we've got bronze. For the most part, there's kind of conservation of matter. I had 4 ingots in, I'm going to get 4 ingots out. But for some metals, they become more dense when they're mixed together, so you don't get back everything you put in. So let's talk about how to get some stuff out of here. This is another pattern chest in which I have actual metal working patterns. So I made all of these by taking just a regular stone block, using the patterns I had upstairs, and making a stone part of that kind. I took my stone part, I dropped it on the table, and then I poured out some molten gold on top of them, and that made the patterns. You can also use aluminum brass, which is another one of the mixtures, alloys that you can make. It turns out aluminum is a little harder to find on this server, so I wound up using gold. But in any case, if I want to make just a regular ingot, I can take my ingot cast, drop it on the table, click on the faucet, and it's going to pour out 1 ingot's worth of bronze. So there we are, bronze ingot. And inside I can see now I've only got 3 bronze ingots worth of metal left. So if I wanted to make something like a hammerhead, I can't. I don't have enough bronze to make that. Or that, or that, or that, or that. So some of these parts for the bigger tools take a lot of bronze. So I can make a tough binding. Let's try that. Take my tough binding cast, remove the ingot cast, put down the tough binding cast, and pour. That's going to take a little longer because it's pouring out 3 ingots. But now I've got my tough binding. Well, it turns out I don't actually need a tough binding, so I'm going to toss that right back in here. And it's going to melt down the tough binding and give me back that metal. So no matter what you do with parts, you can always melt them down and get them back again. And in fact, if you find a villager's hut for Tinker's Construct, you can find metal parts in there and actually retrieve a little bit of metal of various alloys by melting down the pieces that you find in the villagers' huts. So that's the basics of a smeltery. Over here I've got some storage drawers where I've got materials of various kinds that I kind of had surplus extra metal in my casting smeltery. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? So I actually just brought it back and poured it out as tool rods, which take 1/2 of an ingot each, which is kind of the smallest unit of anything that you're going to make with this thing. So I've got these ready to melt down again if I should happen to need some extra metal for a project that I'm working on. So here we are, almost done melting down this bronze tough casting. And maybe what I really want to do is just cast this back into ingots. So I'll toss that plate back down there. Wait for just another second here. And now I've got my 3 ingots. I can just pour those out one at a time into the ingot cast and get my ingots back again. Now, one of the other nice things here is if I were actually to put raw ore blocks in here, I'd actually get 2 ingots worth of metal out of each ore block, which is, of course, twice what you'll get from a regular furnace. So this is the second thing I build in the game. Once I've gotten myself a bed and a couple of basic tools, I will go find all the clay and sand and gravel and make this next, before I go spend a lot of time digging up any kind of metal ore. And that way, right away, I can double the amount of ore that I get out of the ground. Okay, so that's it for showing off the smeltery. Let's take a look at some of these tools that you get. I happen to have on me my lumber axe and nothing else. So let me go grab those tools. We'll take a little trip outside and demonstrate what we can do here. So here's my hammer, and here's my excavator, and I'll grab my crossbow as well. That's a pretty fabulous weapon. Okay. So the first thing we want to show off is, oops, get my jetpack on here. All right, so the first thing I want to show off is this lumber axe. The lumber axe is a lot like a regular hatchet, except it will knock down an entire tree all at once. I just focus on the bottom block, use the lumber axe like a hatchet, and it knocks down the whole thing. Now you notice the leaves came away very rapidly. It's because I have a mod installed called the Fast Leaf Decay mod, which causes all the leaves to just disappear a lot more rapidly than they normally would. So you can imagine this is great for clearing out a big area of forest. So before I get started on my big bases, I'll usually go and make some of these tools to accelerate the process. The second tool is this excavator. So the excavator is a lot like a shovel, except it does 9 blocks at once. Really, really, really handy when you're trying to clear out a big area or make a big flat spot for your base, or knock off the top of a hill, or whatever it is you're trying to do. That excavator has saved me a ton of time. Finally, the last one of these tools that I want to show off is the hammer. So what the excavator is for dirt and shovel-like activities, the hammer is for mining, for stone, for basically your pickaxe. So it takes away 9 blocks all at once. Another interesting thing to note, I actually have a silky emerald, I think it's called, on this bronze hammer, which means it has silk touch. So instead of getting cobblestone, I'm getting plain dacite, which is the kind of stone we've got down here. This makes it really easy to make these humongous big tunnels and to dig up lots of stone all at once. So you can imagine how much cobblestone and how much regular smooth stone it requires to build a base like this. This makes it a whole lot easier. I can get all that stone very, very quickly when I've got my hammer handy. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about in this world for today is this crossbow. So the crossbow is a lot like a regular bow, except that when you draw it back, it stays drawn back. In other words, you don't have to keep holding your button down. So I put this crossbow away entirely with the last quarrel knocked. So as I find some friends out here, you can see how it shrinks back to the center after I've fired. And now it's knocked again. It's ready to go. And I'm not holding down any buttons at all. I've also gone to a lot of trouble to use the right materials. So crossbows are tricky because you want something really springy for the bow part, and you want something really sturdy for the body, and you want all the other kinds of things. So I've added lots of quartz, and I've added lots of gosh, what else have I added? I don't even remember anymore. But I spent a lot of time gathering all the materials and kind of crafting all the right bits and pieces together to make this as sturdy as I possibly could and as effective as a weapon as I possibly could. So now, when I use this, it does 15 damage with every strike, which is enough to fell even a creeper with one shot. So, here we are. Talked about Tinker's Construct, walked through a lot of the different tools and things that you can make with it, some of the more advanced stuff you can make once you get a tool forge, and shown off some of the armor and what it can do. I've also talked about how I pick where I'm going to put my base, kind of a scenic place with lots of open room that's going to be easy to flatten out, and talked a little bit about how I use some of these tools in order to make my initial kind of spaces available. Oh, did I mention these things shoot really, really far? Fantastic, fantastic thing to have when you're in the Nether. Anyway, I think that's all I want to cover for today. Next time I will pick something else and dive in. If there's something in particular that you'd like to see, though, let me know in the comments, and I will try to cover that next. That's all. Talk to you later.